A couple of weeks ago, Blizzard announced the release date of the 11.2.5 patch, which would have included the Turbo Boost event. However, what was also very important was to know when the Denar vendor, the cartel chip vendor to buy your best in slot items, was also going to come out. So we came up with this prediction. So from the moment Season 2 began, 78 days later, the Denar vendor comes out. If we use that same number, 78 days later, then the Denar vendor in Season 3 will come out October the 21st. So the prediction was either to see this gear vendor come up 3 weeks after Turbo Boost, if it was from patch to patch, or 2 weeks after Turbo Boost, just like we had to wait 2 weeks after Turbo Boost last season. So October the 21st is also indeed when the Denar vendor is going to come out, when you can start, I guess, planning for the items you want to buy from that vendor. Now the announcement, the official announcement from Blizzard comes out with the things we were expecting, the fact that just like we assumed, you will have to defeat the bosses in Mythic Raid difficulty if you want those items in Myth-Track level, just like you need heroic bosses and even normal difficulty or higher if you want Hero Track items, as well as the other thing we were expecting. You will get 3 of the cartel chips all at once in week 1, so you get to buy an item immediately, and then you have to wait 3 weeks for the second item, and then 3 more weeks for the third item. Now, true, this season, the second and third item, definitely the third item, will be valued a little bit less, because by that point you will literally be less than 2 months away from the next expansion, because that third cartel chip, that third best in slot item, will be 3 months from now. So we will be in January, and we are expecting the expansion to be in late February, early March, so it won't be nearly as valuable. However, out of all of our correct predictions for this event, we missed something. We underestimated something slipped our radar, which was this thing right here. Now, Blizzard made no mention of this particular thing, but we assume it is granted. There is no mention in this one, the original post from Blizzard, there is no mention of the fact that Crests will no longer have a cap. Now, we assume this is, implicit, it's given for granted, since now you have to farm several hundred gilded crests to upgrade all of your gear, obviously still keeping this 90 gilded crests per week cap. It will still be very, very restrictive. Obviously we gave it for granted, right? It made sense. The game now increases your item level up to 6. You're gonna need 400 plus crests to cap all of your gear, so obviously your crest cap will have to be lifted if you want to get all of those item levels back up to now 8 out of 8 instead of 6 out of 6. Well, what the Blizzard is saying is, as of the week of October the 21st, so when the vendor comes out, not when the patch comes out, the cap for crests is lifted, and Valor Stones become Warbound, and Mythic Plus drop rates for Warband equipped gear become doubled, etc, etc. However, the important part is the very first one. The crest cap will be lifted on October the 21st, when the vendor for gear is out, not when the patch releases and all of your gear gets a 6 item level jump. This simply means that when 11.2.5 launches, when all of your gear goes from being 6 out of 6 to 6 out of 8, and you now require 30 gilded crests to bring it back up to 8 out of 8 and jump up 6 item levels, all of the gilded crests you would have needed now are not uncapped. They will still keep that 90 gilded crest weekly cap for 2 more resets. This is definitely not what we expected. Effectively, this pretty much delays the release of the actual patch by a couple of weeks, because for the first 2 weeks, for this gear being increased, you can't really get all of that power that early. There are some players who have suggested, well, I guess now the play is to save your gilded crests, so that when the patch launches you have 100, 200 plus stockpiled gilded crests. Well, the thing is, if you keep getting good items from the vault, if you keep doing mythic raid and looting items, or even every couple of weeks spending 60 crests for a crafted item, you don't really gain much from stockpiling all of these gilded crests, right? If in this weekly reset coming tomorrow, you are offered from the vault a mythic chest, there is no reason to stockpile those gilded crests instead of just upgrading the chest you have been offered right now to 723. So there wouldn't really be much stockpiling of crests to be done. Now, to be fair, we have actually found the reason why when we were talking about it, without realizing it would have been the reason why this is going to be delayed by 2 weeks. Perhaps the only surprise is for Blizzard to sort of fight itself in competition by releasing Legion Remix in the same week as the Turbo Boost event. Perhaps it would have made much sense to release Remix maybe like 1 week after Turbo Boost, maybe 2 weeks after Turbo Boost, you know, to leave a gap for players rather than releasing both of them at once. And yeah, this makes sense. We were wondering, you know, it's a bit weird though that we are going to get our uncapped gilded crest requiring us to do dozens of dungeons on the same day, on the same release of Legion Remix. It felt like it would have felt like you were trying to split the time of players between powering up in retail, getting the max power in retail, while they also wanted to spend time in Legion Remix. So it does make sense, thinking about it, to delay the uncapping of crests by a couple of weeks. So players go in Mythic Plus, they do 5 plus 12s or so, and then they are capped in crests. So even if they wanted to farm 20 dungeons to fully increase their character's item level by 6, because all the gear has just increased in its upgrade track, they can't because the crests are still capped for the week. So they might as well just log off and go play Legion Remix at that point. I believe that seems to be the logic, that seems to be the thinking of Blizzard for this unexpected 2 weeks delay of the uncapping of crests. They didn't want players to feel divided on what they wanted to do, on what they had to do, like they had to complete the chore of doing some 20 dungeons to upgrade their character while they wanted to spend time in Legion Remix, or maybe the opposite, feeling like they were wasting time in Legion Remix when the retail character was being left behind because he wasn't spending time upgrading their gear, so they just delayed the uncapping of crests by a couple of weeks. Now, unfortunately, it's not that too much else is happening in 11.2.5 outside of the Turbo Boost event, and of course a huge chunk of the content of 11.2.5 is in Legion Remix. So when it comes to the actual in-game content in retail, pretty much the one thing you have to check is the further additions of the cooldown manager and the UI updates coming in 11.2.5. You're gonna have the addition of the customization of spells in the cooldown manager. So now, instead of having the default stock standard cooldown manager UI, you get to hand pick what you want to see in your icons, and then you also get to hand pick what you want to see in terms of buffs on your character. So if you don't care about certain buffs, you can start ignoring them in 11.2.5. Obviously not really something worth keeping you busy for 2 weeks in retail without the introduction of the Turbo Boost event. I do understand though, and even agree with this decision of Blizzard to delay everything by 2 weeks. However, I do think, as it has often been sometimes the complaint, slightly better communication from Blizzard's side would have been better, right? If we knew ahead of time, like let's just say a month ago, even a month and a half ago, during one of the Blizzard release of information events like Gamescom, for example, we were being told we are going to do like last expansion, we are going to have a turbo boost event again, we are going to have a dinar vendor, a gear vendor for your character, you're going to have the uncapped crest system again, but just keep in mind that this season the event, the uncapping of the crest for you to farm all of your gear to max item level again, will be delayed by a couple of weeks, because this year we are releasing Legion Remix, which is launching at the same time, so we don't want you to feel forced in splitting time between the Turbo Boost event in retail and Legion Remix, so we're gonna delay the Turbo Boost event by a couple of weeks, right? If players knew this, a month ago, 5-6 weeks ago, it would have felt better. They would have been expecting, they would have known what to expect better. Instead, now this announcement is practically coming about 10 days before the release of the actual event. So players were ready, expecting this to be working in a certain way, just like last expansion, and then just 10 days before the actual event, Blizzard comes up with this change. So while I do agree with the delaying of the uncapping of Crests and the splitting of the time between the two events coming, it should have been communicated better and ahead of time to give players time to prepare for what was about to happen. But with this being done, this is the main announcement for this Monday, the beginning of this week, beginning of the week that is about to bring us in the last reset before 11.2.5. Although, as we have said, at this point we might as well say the reset before Legion Remix, because it's not that much will happen in 11.2.5 until the gear vendor and the crests will uncap 2 weeks from the release of the patch, so on October the 21st. So there is still a bit more to wait when it comes to retail, not much more to wait when it comes to Legion Remix, coming much sooner. So with this out of the way on this Monday, beginning of this new week, it is now time to leave each other. We're starting the goodbyes as usual by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching, see you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, it is always a beautiful, bittersweet feeling when you work out and then you wake up the day after with all of your sore muscles. It's pain, but it's also gratifying.